So Cam Newton got cut, and I think we could all agree that Cam Newton's quarterback play hasn't been great for a couple of years, but I think the cut itself is surprising. I guess the real question right now, there's a couple things that stand out to me. One, what do you think that offense looks like with Mac Jones? Is he the real deal? Is Cam Newton just that? Has Cam Newton just been that bad? And then two, like where do you think Cam Newton might end up? Can he help a team? Can he make a difference somewhere else? Um, I mean, at the very least, I think he could still be like a Taysom Hill kind of guy, and we've seen how effective that can be for the Saints. So, like, if he goes to the right situation on a good team with a coordinator that would be willing to build a few things around his running ability, like that could be really interesting to me too.
It could be, but the my first thought when you said that was that's what the Patriots just tried to do last year, and it just didn't work. But also, it seemed like he had no shoulder to throw with. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I thought he looked better this preseason. I don't know how much of him you caught, but I thought he looked fine. I was I was surprised. I was very surprised that this happened. I wasn't surprised that Mac Jones was a starter, but like these guys were competing in what seemed like a very close competition this entire preseason. I almost even though I thought Mac Jones looked good enough to start, I was thinking in my head like, they'll give it to the vet and then they'll ease the rookie in at some point. So I guess I say that to say like I think Cam Newton is going to find like a spot on another team. The Cowboys have been mentioned. That seems kind of weird to me because it's been known that Cam Newton does not want to be a backup. Like I think he's even been vocal about that. So when I saw that news, the first thought I had was, what's going on with Dak? Like is Dak okay? Because they said he is, but is he really? I don't understand. But to get back real quick to like just the Patriots, um, how I think this impacts New England. The very first thought I had is probably the most obvious one, but it was the Damian Harris role. Cam Newton had, I think I saw the stat today, it was like 19 rushes inside the 5 yard line last year. Definitely don't expect that to be the case with Mac Jones. So my thought was, is there going to be more touchdown opportunity on the ground for the running backs at this point? And, obviously with Damian Harris, he's going somewhere in like, I don't know, seventh, eighth round range, I think, right now. He's not going to be the pass catching down back. But if he even has the opportunity to see a few more looks at the goal line, I just think I don't know how that doesn't boost him up a little bit more than he already was going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Cam, I agree that I think Cam looked better as a passer this year. I think he looked like he was playing a little less safe than what we saw last year in New England. I think his lack of effectiveness for what I might picture another team using him as was because they didn't have the complementary throwing threat. I mean, obviously, when you put one guy on the field, you want to be less predictable. You don't want the team to know what you're doing necessarily. So like him being able to throw is still a factor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Cam Newton not being in New England helps Damian Harris. Cam Newton not being in New England could help some of these receivers. Jacoby Myers, N'Keal Harry's still in trade rumors, but this might give him another opportunity. Somebody that I think more than a couple people still have some hopes in him being an effective player. And they have these two tight ends. So I mean, Damian Harris's arrow has been going up. Like they're running two
Yeah,
tight
slowly
ends
being
with
for a while.
yeah, like I mean Hunter Henry, Johnny Smith are going to be on the field a lot, especially with the receivers that the Patriots don't have. So like that's an uptick. Cam Newton not taking red zone touches, that's an uptick. So like wherever you thought Damian Harris was, you need to at this point probably bump him up I would say around like roughly around in your fantasy draft.
Yeah, it might be fair to say around. Yeah. The other thing, if we're talking about the running backs real quick though, if James White, it seems like he's probably still going to be the third down back, the pass catching down back. Jones, Mac Jones, I saw a lot of short passes. It's not like he was afraid to go downfield. He did when it made sense, but I saw a lot of short throws. Like he's willing to do the dump offs. That kind of spark my interest in James White again a little bit. I'm still probably not drafting the guy, but if you're in a full PPR league and you go like receiver heavy, maybe you take a tight end at quarterback and you're just looking at those running backs at the bottom, he would be somebody that would stick out to me with Mac Jones. More interesting. I think as I'm talking about it out loud, I think I am a little more interested in all of New England now, just because all I could keep thinking of is what I saw last year with Cam Newton, and I was so afraid that if you were to buy into any of those guys, that you could potentially be signing up for that again. And now I don't feel that way anymore. I think probably the guy that I would be targeting from the wide receiver group is still Jacoby Myers for sure. That's probably the first one that's going and maybe the only one that's being drafted. Aguilar's there too, right? I don't I don't
Aguilar
know.
is there.
Yeah, so I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know if that affects Jacoby Myers or not, but the little bit we've seen in preseason, that's not been the case. It's still been Jacoby Myers. So for me, it would be like I'd be willing to take Damian Harris, and like you said, it might be around sooner than what it has been. I'd be okay with that, especially if you are running back needy towards the end of the drafts or even like in those middle rounds, I guess. I'd definitely be willing to do that. James White in full PPR towards the end of drafts, I would be more interested in now. And maybe Jacoby Myers is someone you could draft. I think he's still going pretty late, like 12th, 13th round. If you feel like if you need receivers at the end, you could do worse. I guess I'll put it that way.
Well, and if you go like no tight ends option for your draft, there Hunter Henry and Janu Smith will be available. I think that the rankings guys aren't willing to commit to putting either of those guys or both of those guys in starter territory, and I get it. Um, However, like Josh McDaniels is still there. He was there when they were running Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Definitely different players, but I think there's a lot of room for two tight ends to produce. I think when you get that far down the list, a, like a tight end 10 isn't that hard to obtain. I'm leaning Hunter Henry. So, like, if I go no tight end, I think I'm okay with walking away with Hunter Henry. Part of that is also being that you can find a replacement. I think there are a few guys that could have a year. So, like, I'm not saying like draft him and ride him out for the whole year, but I'm saying it. I think if you go no tight end, you don't grab one early or at all till the last few rounds. Like those two guys are gonna be there, and I would pick probably Henry over Smith just because I think he's the more clear receiving threat, and I think he gets a slight bump too from Mac Jones. But
Yeah, well,
interesting
it's
element for the Patriots for me is that this is probably the most clear cut that the Patriots backfield has been in years. Like Rex Burkhead was that
mhm.
annoying guy the last 2 3 years, and he's gone. I know Cam's been itching to say it, so go ahead.
What, James White?
No,
I'm
who
sorry.
who else is missing from the Patriots backfield?
Missing from the Sony Michelle.
Yeah.
Dude, I like that guy.
So Sony
Well,
Michel's
here's the
gone.
thing.
I mean, you essentially
I,
might have two guys right now in New England's backfield. And when's the last time we've been able to say that?
it's possible, except the Sony Michelle trade could say just as much about what they think about the rookie, the Ramondre Stevenson. He has looked good in preseason. It could like like I said, I would draft Damian Harris, but I would have this thing in the back of my mind that it's possible that Stevenson is more involved than we anticipate, and maybe that's right from the jump, or maybe that's not till we're a few weeks into the season. But it's something to be mindful of. Like
Maybe
he
he's
is
the
also a power back.
maybe he's the guy that if they're going up against a smaller defense, they do a little LeGarrette Blount game. Like maybe
Yeah,
he
it's
gets a
possible. But
game
then
here
my
and
thing is
there.
like, isn't that Damian Harris? Like, isn't that what he's supposed to be? Because he's very clearly just a first and second down back. And so like these two guys are similar in that regard, except Stevenson can catch the ball a little bit too. He's the dark horse of this group that wasn't getting drafted before. I haven't checked his ADP. I'm guessing he's probably one of those guys that people are taking flyers on at the end of drafts now. and that's just somebody to think about.
I mean, where are you putting him? Like on your radar?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're in a 10-team league, like if you're in a shallow league, you're probably not drafting him. But if you're in a 12-team league or more, I think you're probably putting him on the end of your bench. That's where I would be at with it. Because it's just what I've seen in preseason with him. I was like he kind of stood out to me. Like I remember having the preseason game on, and he was out there, had a few nice carries. I'm like, who was this dude? And so I'm sitting here paying more attention, paying more attention. Next week, he kind of did the same thing. He showed out a little bit again. Then you see Sony Michelle get traded, and I don't know. Like, does that mean because they're definitely full on committed to Damian Harris and James White? Maybe, or maybe it's because they really like this other kid too.
Yeah,
And Michelle was starting to show like he's wearing down,
yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah. And I mean, if Stevenson is like they have him listed on, so we are using. I mean, it's not like something we're avoiding talking about. NBC Sports Edge is what we're using for a reference today. That's what we have in our main panel. We're just gonna like skim through these articles, give you guys some stuff to look at. Um, they they have Stevenson listed as a goal line back, so he's not on their running back depth chart on there. Take that for what you might.
Really?
But if he's the goal line back, then that might if that's a role that he earns, then you might have to scale back, like give a little tiny bump back down for like a Harris because maybe some of those Cam Newton red zone touches go to Stevenson. So we'll just kind of see how that plays out. But
Yep.
until we know that that's a thing, I think you're giving Harris that uptick. I think you're giving James White that uptick, and like you can point at 30 running backs in a fantasy draft right now that you're like something could happen in the first 3 weeks that could change this.
Yeah, I think the right way to put it is like don't overreact to that possibility by not just writing Damian Harris off your board. It's just something to be mindful of and pay attention to from week one.
Oh
If you're a
yeah.
Damian Harris owner and you see Stevenson getting some work, like I would just take note of that. And you're going to have guys on the end of your bench anyway that are going to essentially be burners. Like they're essentially going to be guys that you can just drop and pick up as you please.
Yeah.
So it's just something to pay attention to. Don't overreact to the news, but just
But it
have it in the back
prepares you
in the back
to
of your mind.
yeah, it prepares you to make the appropriate reaction if Stevenson starts gaining some traction. So it's like
Exactly.
you first, if you consider both things as a possibility, Harris being a workhorse and or Stevenson getting some reps later on, then you're in a position to draft Harris where other people might be overlooking him in case he does end up being the guy long term. But you're also going to be a little more sensitive to some of those touches that Stevenson gets, and you have another chance to be. You could be the with this information, you could be the first guy to get Harris and the first guy to get Stevenson when it's time later on, week 2, week 3. Like it's a win-win. We're like just keep an eye on it. Use that as an opportunity to react if things do change a little bit. Um, I have an interesting idea on where Cam Newton might end up. I kind of want to hear
Okay.
Cam. Why do you think he should go to Dallas? Because that seems to be the main report right now.
Oh man, Cam Newton in Dallas. I don't really see a need for it unless, like Josh said, there's something a lot more serious behind the scenes going on with Dak than they're really telling us. I don't really see why Dallas would even want a Cam Newton. But again, that's just personal preference. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't even seem like the right fit necessarily. But
No, my thing with that is the only to me is because like I said, I'm pretty sure Cam has been open about not wanting to be a backup, and I think that could also be part of the reason why the Patriots released him once they decided Mac Jones was going to be the starter. I can understand why Dallas would want him, just because
they don't have a backup,
we
do
saw
they?
what happened when Dak was hurt last year. It was a
Mm-hmm.
total disaster, And so
Dallas
like
is
they want
afraid.
to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to avoid that. So it would make sense. But if Cam, I guess the part where it doesn't make sense to me is if Cam then decides to go there, either that means like he felt he didn't really, maybe didn't have many other options potentially, or, and this is the more unlikely, but, or there's a little more concern about Dak's health than they're leading on. That's how I feel about it.
Right.
Well, Cam was in the same situation last year, and then he took like a $1 million deal. It was like him and Jameis Winston were being paid less than backups around the league. So like he didn't want to take a back seat last year, and then the way free agency played out and the longer he sat, he ended up taking an opportunity to compete in New England. And he ended up being the guy and getting some time. But part of me kind of wonders like maybe he would like to be the starter, but is he in another position to just accept that maybe that's not what he's going to be able to do? My thought on where he might end up that could be most interesting to me, but also be a bummer for fantasy, is a Panthers reunion. Because they went and they got Sam Darnold, and last year they had Teddy Bridgewater, and it's partially because of the way that Bridgewater played out. This Darnold thing kind of feels the same way to me now, and it might not be fair to Sam Darnold, but it's like I think they're looking for solutions in the wrong places. I think they're looking at guys that have had opportunities and maybe not done as much as they could have with them. But I mean, Cam Newton was very good for them. He won an MVP with them. So there's a little bit of like a relationship there. But like
Except
if he went there, I would be pretty bummed for their receivers. I would like really dislike it for fantasy. But if I were guessing right now, I think there is a chance that Cam Newton could play quarterback for the Panthers this year, and I think it's somewhere where he would be comfortable, and that would probably be where my gut is leaning right now.
so the only thing I would say about that is it's a different coach. You have Ron Rivera that was there, Cam was his dude, and now he's in Washington. There was actually Ron Rivera's actually already been asked about Cam Newton since this happened, and I think his quote was, it was something along the lines of, uh, "It popped on my desk" or something like that, or "I'm aware of it" or whatever, something like that. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is our starter, so take that for what it is. You know, now you have Matt Rule in Carolina, so I don't know. It seems like Matt Rule's the one making the decisions over there in Carolina, not the ownership, not like the front office. So that would be my stipulation there. Is I don't know if, because it's a different coaching system now. I I'm sure Cam Newton would probably just feel comfortable with just the fact that it's in the same city that he played for so long, and he knows a lot of those players. But the coaching would be the only thing about it that would probably surprise me.
He profiles as that would be Cam's level of interest. He profiles as the types of quarterbacks that Carolina has been trying to poach and try to build up, like the Bridgewater, like the Darnold. So like for me, Carolina's interest would be more Cam Newton's current profile.
Yeah.
The Washington thing's a great point. Um, Cam Newton, when the Carolina team kind of disassembled, like Greg Olson left too, like the older veteran guys that had been good for them for a while kind of felt like they were getting pushed out of town, and Ron Rivera was the guy
Mm-hmm.
saying like, "No, like we're OGs, like we want to keep this together. Those are my guys." So like, yeah,
Right.
Ron Rivera, he was a team guy, a player, he was a man of the players. So totally agree with that. And Washington is kind of in a situation to consider that too.
I think so because we know that Ryan Fitzpatrick, that shit can go south as quick as a Jameis Winston can go south. Like there could be 3 games in a row of multiple turnovers with a team that has some expectation with Washington. Like they've got some expectation this year. And then if you would have a Cam Newton to turn to, I don't know if he would be better or not, but I would like, I think they would probably like that option, especially if you're Ron Rivera, right? Like I'm sure he likes Cam Newton. So if Cam Newton was willing to accept a backup role to start the season, that would make sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Got
definitely
Curtis
a
Samuel over there now,
former Panther.
former Panther with Rivera. Just saying.
It would definitely be interesting. Washington's defense is good enough, and they have the skill players too that
Hmm.
like they should probably be in like more of a win now mode. And typically, when you have a hole, you would be trying to fill that with veterans. That way, you're not going through learning curves and ups and downs. So, like, I could see that.
Yeah.